Hey there.
Hi, Mark. Jay Sweet. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Am I okay here? Am I
Yeah, you sound clear. You look good.
all right?
Yeah, good. This is for the Jazz Real Book, a very podcast on jazz musicians and the Real Book tunes and a breakdown of those. So I want to welcome you and introduce you to all my guests, the great bass player Marc Johnson. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Excellent, cool. So the one thing I wanted to first bring up or ask you about is this new recording that came out. I hope I'm saying it right. Tremonto? Is that the?
Tramonto, I guess that's how you say it. It's an Italian word, I think.
Yeah, it means maybe sunset, if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could talk about this recording and having to listen to, or not having to, but the joys of listening to this group after so many years.
Well, thanks. John Taylor invited Joey Barron and I to play some music with him and do a recording. It was in right around the turn of the new century, and we put together a couple of tour schedules, and I think this we were about to record an album for ECM in the studio, which ended up being called Roslyn. I don't know if
Mm.
you're familiar with that album, but anyway, we were doing some live gigs in the UK. I'm not sure if I remember where this was recorded. Birmingham, maybe, or Manchester. I forgot. I think Birmingham.
This Birmingham, according to the liner notes.
Yeah. And it was in 2002, I think. Is
Yeah.
that right? Yeah.
Hmm.
So in those days, I was still carrying my fiddle around with me.
Mm.
So, what can I say? John presented this music, his songs and some standards sometimes,
Yeah.
and this was culled from that live gig, this album Tremonto. Tremonto's actually Ralph Towner's tune,
Right.
and we recorded it on the album Roslyn as well. But I think this live version is even somehow prettier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Re-
Well, I don't know what else to say about that meeting, except that we all have this particular affinity for, um, you know, kind of that concept of accompanying and soloing at the same time.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be, I mean, there definitely was a real connectivity with that group, having listened to various recordings. If I could just ask first about like Joey Barron, playing with him, and just the connection you have with Joey.
Well, Joey and I have a lot of affinity for the beat.
Yeah,
We subdivide the beat kind of similarly, and we have a lot of trust in the time so that we can take quite a lot of liberties, take liberties with the ideas that we express or play and rice and dice the beat and obfuscate where one is sometimes and just have fun, basically. So um, we we balance all of that with a certain amount of take care of business
yeah,
aspect of the time. But on the other side of it is a lot of kind of exploration and freewheeling and just let any idea flow. And when you get into that flow simultaneously with three people, a lot of sparks fly.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be within the group concept, at least on this particular recording, there is these more open elements to it for sure, but then there's some moments where it really just grooves, almost like in a funky, kind of a way, and it's that sort of that ebb and flow that really is what I would like my listeners to know about. I mean, just the it seems like there's just this shifting ability within the rhythm section instruments and with John as well.
Yeah. Well, that's a conception and we're trying to reach for that. And I think it was mostly successful. And whenever you're taking risks on that level, there's bound to be a couple of I wouldn't say uh, well, just moments that you have to recover from, and they go by fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh, but yeah, it's a way of playing that's really, really fun. And uh, I don't, what can I say? Um, you hit on something a second ago that sparked an idea of mine. Well, continue. I don't.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, anything that comes to mind, let me know because the whole creative process I'm very interested in. And I mean, if we could just go back and talk about some of your other things, but if before that, sort of your upbringing, because I'm curious about this. Born in Nebraska, how did you come to play the bass and learn about jazz?
Well, so many jazz musicians here at home and stuff growing up, and that was my case for sure. My father is a music educator. He was a pianist, and he was classically trained. He was teaching in the public school system in Omaha when we were living there, and then he, everything that you do in music education, and in those days at that high school that he taught at, there was they'd put on these Broadway musicals every year as a part of their education program. So it would
Mhm,
combine, it was like multi-discipline uh, approach to education there. So there was theater, there were theater people involved, there were set design people
right,
involved from the, shop, and then there was the music. And so you had all these teachers and students together on this project that would take many weeks of preparation. And then
yeah,
they'd put on these shows. And whenever they needed child actors to fill in those roles, like The Sound of Music or
sure.
Annie Get Your Gun. So I was participating in those things in that capacity. And it was a lot of fun. So that was an early, I was a kid, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And that was part of my musical background was Broadway shows. Mom had those records on all the time, tons of them. She loved those shows, and it became part of my background, and which later became part of the foundation for jazz improvisation. A lot of those tunes made their way into the jazz, you know, vernacular. Um, Dad also was a nightclub performer at times, so he had a lot of jazz records he was listening to, and Bill Evans, of course, Oscar Peterson, Dave Brubeck, the pianists, basically, Nat King Cole. Dad had a collection of 78s of Nat King Cole trio before he was a singer.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. But also during that time, I was about 10 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12. The bossa nova was quite a the rage. So he'd have to play those things at night. I can remember going into his office or his music room when he wasn't around and picking out one note samba and meditation from the sheet music that he had on the piano.
Yeah.
But so my background there was jazz. I was a cellist during those years.
Okay.
I studied cello, started at age 11, and kept it going until I was about 16. And at
Mhm.
age 16, I took up the bass. By then, we had moved to Texas because my dad wanted to get a graduate degree. He was working on a PhD at that point in music theory. So we went to Denton, Texas, and that's where I took up the bass. And I was there for about 7 years.
So what was the decision? Why did you switch to bass?
Well, it was kind of like serendipitous, right? The orchestra teacher was losing his bass section to graduation, and he said, I was this 10-year-old, I mean 10th grade incoming kid that didn't play cello very well. Maybe he could play the bass.
It seems to be like the story. I mean, that's my story, but it seems to be almost every story. I did a book on Ray Brown, and the bass was he was a pianist and not the best pianist, so there was a bass, and they gave him the bass. And more and more bass players I talk to, it's like always the thing. But it must have made sense because you had an affection for jazz, and you mentioned some records with really great bass players on them. So were you like kind of focusing on bass while you were listening to those piano, like Oscar Peterson, to Bill
Oh,
Evans?
I guess, when I was playing cello, Dad would bring me in the room and he said, Here, play this. He wrote out a bass line for me over a blues or something, and I'd be playing along with that. So I think I was already in tune with what's going on the bottom part of the music.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bass parts are just doubling the cello parts, in orchestras and stuff. So I kind of, and I was from the bass clef. I'm already familiar with bass and tenor clef by the time I took up the bass. And I just, they had a stage band that met twice a week at high school, and I was interested in playing in that. So I started playing in the stage band. I guess that's what you call it, the lab band,
Sure.
big band for high school kids. And we weren't very good, but we rehearsed the same tune over and over and over for a semester. So by the time, we went to these little competitions and stuff in statewide competitions, and we did very well because the band director wanted, had a lot of pride and he wanted to put his best foot forward. And so it wasn't about learning to read, it was most about learning to play as an ensemble and play in tune and,
Mhm.
you know, not get lost.
But it was so first was orchestral training, but you were at University of North Texas, I believe. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, by then I'd already had 3 years of orchestra background playing in the Fort Worth Youth Orchestra for
Hmm.
every Saturday. We'd do that and then put on performance. I was a classical player, and when I got to the school at North Texas, I uh, I couldn't fit the big band program into my curriculum, so I stayed away from the jazz program for basically 2 years
Okay.
until I was 20 years old, and then I got deep into it. And
All right. Yeah. So was that the 1 o'clock band? A lot of people.
yeah, I wouldn't say I stayed away from jazz. I stayed away from the curriculum, the jazz curriculum at North Texas for two
Oh,
years. I was just deep into the requisites for a bachelor degree, at that point. And but off campus, I was doing a lot of jam sessions. And there was one guy in particular, or a couple. Phil Cannon was one of them. He's a tenor player. And he was totally a Coltrane fanatic. So we were playing the all as much as the Coltrane material as we could.
yeah. Totally.
And so that was my background, and I came up through the solo literature, playing classical bass all through 4 years of college. By the second 2 years, I met Lyle Mays, who was
Mm,
also in school there, and he was writing music for big band. We were playing together off campus in jam sessions, and he and his drummer friend Steve Houghton kind of insisted that I be part of the big band that they were in, the 1 o'clock band. So that was the spring of 75. And Lyle was a great, I wouldn't say mentor, but he was a great colleague and he really pushed the envelope. He knew that I could play the bass to a certain degree technically. So he would write these really hard, not hard, but involved bass parts
mhm.
and kept me on my toes. And I advanced a lot those years. And then after school, they went on the road with Woody Herman, and I was playing 6 nights a week in Dallas with a pianist, and a mentor of mine became Fred Crane.
Okay. Not familiar. Okay.
Fred was a contemporary of Bill Evans. They knew each other. Fred took a scholarship at the same college in Baton Rouge where Bill Evans had been studying.
Okay.
And he also took a stint on Woody Herman's band back in the 50s. Fred did. He was then living in Dallas in 76, 77, 78 until he passed away, really. But this is an interesting sidebar. So I learned a lot of tunes playing with Fred Crane. It was piano, bass, and voice. So we did a lot of accompanying of a singer. Joyce Wilson was her name, and did a lot of great material, beautiful songs. I learned a lot about just keeping, playing time and playing good notes, playing with taste,
Sure.
to play tastefully. And that lasted a while until Lyle called me to come to New York. But later, Fred Crane was working with Al Hurt, and they were
Mhm.
looking for a drummer, and I recommended Joey Barron.
Oh, okay.
So Joey learned be, became friendly with my mentor, Fred Crane. So we have this history that goes back quite a ways, back into the late 70s, really.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. So you mentioned, well, in terms of bass players you were listening to or trying to perhaps emulate at that time, who were some of your influences on the bass?
Well, at that time, it's at university, especially, well, of course, the Scott LaFaro and Eddie Gomez records with Bill Evans
Sure.
were really important. At the time, I think I was more into Eddie than I was to Scott. And then after some time, I became more interested in the the actual chemistry between Scotty and Paul and Bill. I got deeper into that
Yeah.
feel that they were getting and the sound that they made, you know.
Mm.
So that was that. Dave Holland became an influence for me. Miroslav Vitus at
Oh,
that
yeah.
time. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, uh, there's others, Ray Brown, of course, was already an influence. Ron
Mhm.
Carter, since
Sure.
I'd been hearing Ron Carter since I was 10 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I guess through your dad's record collection and such.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And Miles, those sides with Miles, that was a fertile period during the late 50s and mid to the mid 60s. That was pretty wild.
Yeah. Very cool. So, I mean, it sounds like, so you go to Mile Mays, get you to New York, it sounds like, right? Is that,
Well, that's my story. Yeah, I mean, that's where how Mark traveled into the jazz world. But I was on the road with Woody Herman and I heard that Bill was looking for a new rhythm section
okay.
because some of the cats were living in New York and they'd come back off a holiday, Christmas holiday that year, 77, and they said, "Man, Bill Evans looking for a new rhythm section." So I called my friend Fred Crane,
Hmm.
knew Bill, and said, "Could you put in a word for me? I can get an audition."
Well,
And and so he did. And I called Bill and we set up an audition because I was going to be coming through New York in February with the Woody Herman band, and he was at the Vanguard. In fact, he said, "Why don't you come down to the Vanguard on your night off and sit in?" So I thought, wow, the stars are aligning. Well,
yeah,
we got to New York and the worst blizzard in 36 years hit the city and completely
okay.
it well paralyzed the city, and Bill couldn't get out of his driveway to get to the gig. So that opportunity evaporated. Fast forward a few months later, and in April, and I was on the road. We were outside of Boston, and I went to a phone machine and called Bill and said, "You still looking for a bass player?" And he said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I am, because Michael Moore had been hired and then he quit."
Okay.
So there, the door was open, and I set up an audition again, and the rest is history, as they say. But those things happen, and after Bill passed, I did a couple of years with Stan Getz. Stan was really working a lot then because he's going through a separation and divorce with
Mm.
Monica,
Yeah, yeah.
his wife, and so he had to work. He was like compelled to work,
Hmm.
even if he didn't want to.
Right, right. Well, before I get to Getz, 'cause this is very, Was there like a certain, I mean, you've been listening to Bill Evans your whole life. A lot of your bass heroes are Bill Evans associated bass players. What was it like the first time you met him? Was there a heaviness to it? Were you nervous?
In fact, I guess I should have been. I felt kind of confident at that point, but I think that was more naivete.
Yeah.
Just, but I listened to the first two sets. Chuck Israel was playing bass that night, and Philly Joe Jones was playing drums. Now, at that point in Philly's life and career, he, he'd have great nights on the stand, but for his nerves weren't totally under his command any longer,
Yeah.
from years of whatever kind of physical abuse he put himself through. But anyway, time was funky. It was rushing a lot, and I checked that out for two sets.
Hmm.
And when I got on the bandstand, Bill said, "What do you want to play?" So he let me call the set. I called five tunes that night at
Okay.
set. One of them was Israel. He said, "Wow, I haven't played that in a while."
Hmm.
But so we played, and maybe I read one thing that he wanted me to read, and I spent most of the set just kind of trying to keep the time in check, play
Right.
tastefully, play the right notes, put things in the right place, but not try to be flashy or anything. Just try to take care of business.
Yeah.
And when we got to after the set was over, and I felt really this is what made me feel good. Philly Joe looked at Bill. We were standing up, taking our bows, and Philly came over to me and put his arm around my shoulder. And he looked at Bill and says, "Think we found our man."
Oh, all right. Just like that.
So then Bill cautiously said, "Could you make another gig?" He didn't want to give me, just he says, "I need to." So I started leaving the big band when Bill had a gig,
Mm.
and that lasted through kind of through that lasted a while for a couple months. Be off and I would be sending subs to Woody's band to make a gig with Bill and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And after that, after we were in Amsterdam playing a gig with the trio, and it was a taping with Tony Bennett, I think,
Oh,
was on the same bill.
okay.
So Bill and Tony did a couple duets together, and then there was some trio hits. And I remember Bill called the 12 tone tune.
Mm.
And I know I knew the tune, but he didn't know that. So I sight read it.
Hmm.
After the gig, Bill says to me, well, when I hire somebody, I like to make a commitment for at least a year. Would that be okay with you?
I think it's all right.
So that's how that happened. And then, yeah, I was ecstatic, tell you the truth. I was, the young kid. I called my dad from Europe and let him know. And those were pretty heady times for me. Well, I don't know how old I was, 24 maybe.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, man. Remarkable. So, I mean, I guess, wow, there's a lot to unpack, but like, so first of all, could you talk about what Bill was like at this period, like on a personal level?
Bill was, he never really changed much on a personal level. I mean, he was, I wouldn't say shy. I would never say that, but he was quiet,
Hmm.
reserved, professional. Um, uh, uh, but he had a great sense of humor. And the first 6 months with Philly Joe, they were like brothers. Philly could crack him up. So, I saw him laugh a lot.
Oh,
But with me, he was instructive, but he didn't say much. I think he felt like, the music should just evolve naturally and without a lot of instruction, verbal instruction. So he pretty much controlled everything from the piano, from
right.
the keys, and expected the musicians to be sensitive to what he was doing and pick up on it. And my role at that point was not as an instigator so much. I didn't really, it was more of as an accompanist. Now, the conception of bass playing was already established, but I don't think I was the bass player yet to interact on that level.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So when I listen back to some of that music, especially the first, well, the studio records are different because that was a whole different process. There, that was an interesting process in and of itself. The first album we did was called Affinity with Toots Thielman.
Yeah, yeah, I'm familiar.
And the process for him was we were in the studio for 4 days recording. And we'd take a tune and start, and we'd play a take, go in and listen, come out, get back out and play another take. But before we would play, we'd establish what the format was going to be. You know,
Sure.
okay, here's the intro, then we're going to modulate here or not. Then this will be two choruses for this musician, two choruses for that, then something else. You know what I mean? Everything was established beforehand, that much preparation. Then we do several takes, and after each take I would be listening to my part in the playback saying, what can I do better, what can I do better? Because they already know that the arc of the piece is going to be this long, so how do we get from here from the beginning to the end
Right.
and keep it interesting and sort of go through first, second, third gears,
Gotcha.
and so that was great experience. I could uh you could create your part. That's what I was doing, actually creating my part
Hmm.
and not having to, the notes, you're a certain amount of improvisation, of course, but kind of planning how it's gonna, you know, I if you listen to Snow Peas from that record, you can kind of hear what the thought process that was going on a little bit.
Right. So it was you were really working out parts in more of a way than just interacting like you might live.
Yeah, well, yeah, but because Bill was so consistent, I don't know if he was doing the same thing, but he was so consistent that you could rely on what he was going to play to some
Gotcha.
extent, especially the prepared and melodic stuff that he would like to prepare the intro or prepare the melody
Mhm.
chorus. So in that, you could, because he was so prepared and consistent, you could, if you could fashion your part to be the best way possible to support that.
Wow, that's interesting because when you mentioned Bill Evans and consistent, not in the quality of his playing, yes, but like I often think of Bill Evans as being almost more open on the spot. You know, when you hear him playing, it doesn't sound as, of course, the written melodic line, the head, but it seems like he can go in many, many different
Well,
directions.
he can and he did. And so there's that aspect too. I mean, I'm not saying it was all one thing or the other.
Right.
I'm probably not, I'm not communicating clearly, but just making that record for my own part, for my own contribution to that, I was a fun process because I could perfect it as from take to take to take. And
Understand.
maybe every musician's trying to do that while we take multiple takes. It's not that we're making mistakes or having train wrecks. You're just trying to, get the one that feels the best and has the most
Totally.
continuity.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. And then, so like at one point, the drummer shifts. Was it Joe LaBarba was became the drummer
At
in that?
some point, the drummer became Joe LaBarbera, and that's when the trio started to really gel in a
Yeah,
way. Then I could relax a little more and and by then I knew the book a little better, so I could contribute in another way. And when I listened to the recordings back, I started to play more. This is kind of odd to say, but instead I was following Bill, like always not sure if okay, I was always like a fraction of a second after his. You know
Mm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
as I grew into the trio, I became more on the in the moment instead of reacting to instead of reacting, I was creating in the moment.
hmm
We're talking a fraction of a second
yeah,
difference. But that little fraction of a second it makes all the difference to be
yeah.
to being in the moment rather than reacting to the moment.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, I get what you're saying. So like when you're playing now with the Joe Barber, it seems like a little bit of a return to kind of what he was doing maybe back with like LaFaro and Gomez, right? Where it was more of this interactive kind of a
Well, it's a little bit, especially between Joe and Bill. Uh,
yeah,
but uh, I think that was the concept that Joe was going for, and Bill went right with it. And I think Bill, even in interviews, was commenting how closely resembled, in an organic kind of chemistry way, how that last trio was relating to the first one in
yeah,
terms of, and I think it's because of how he felt too in the music. I think Bill went through a period of personal uh, changes or growth or just, and the music suddenly when I joined the trio was even more central to his life than maybe it had been up to that moment,
right.
period of years. And so his own involvement in the music, he was writing more songs and stuff. I think his own involvement had a lot to do with how he felt about the last trio that he was playing with.
Yeah, I mean, I love the recordings. They're phenomenal. And it seemed like almost like as it turned out, like a natural bookend to his entire musical journey, the first trio and the trio with you.
It's sad to think he passed at age 51.
Oh,
Unbelievable, right?
yeah. I
He
mean,
really did. He so concentrated, uh, and he was so amazing and individual for that. I remember being in a hotel in Munich with Paul Motion, fast forward years later, and we were listening to the hotel piano player. He was a, lounge player, and he's sounding a lot like Bill Evans, trying to sound like Bill. And Paul said, when Bill came on the scene, there was nobody that sounded like him. He said, now you can go into a hotel anywhere in the world and is going to find somebody kind of trying to sound like him.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty vast influence.
Yeah, I mean, what he did, especially in his earlier period, like you're right, there was nobody playing, the same way he was, and then everyone wanted to. But also, there was no one really playing the same way that Scott LaFaro was either.
That's true.
Perspective, right? And talk about a consolidated life. I mean, geez, what?
That was premature. That was really sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, unbelievable.
All right. So, like, obviously, playing with Bill Evans, it raises people's awareness of you. I would think, right, on a
Well,
national.
some people's I thought that I'd had it made by the time, oh, here I am. I'm at this top shelf musical ensemble. I'm Then when he passed away, I was shocked how challenging it was to make a living as a jazz bass player.
I would have thought there would have been like a bunch of groups calling for you, tour it. No,
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I still had a lot to learn, man. You,
really.
you
So,
get pegged. You get pegged as a kind of player that, oh, he's dancing around so much. He can't play time, or I don't know whose conception was what. Eventually, I was thankfully I got hired by the Mel Lewis big band. Mel hired me.
okay, well, that's a totally different. Now you're playing time.
Yeah, I mean now, and so that kept me. That gig was able to network from that one Monday night a week in New York and keep my head above water.
Yeah.
That saved me. And then a year later, that was right after Bill died. I think Bill died in September, and by November I was playing with Mel's band.
Okay.
And that's really saved me during that period before Stan Getz. And it probably established, another foundation in my own playing. Everything helps, and you'll learn from everything, right?
Yeah, totally. And you're talking about the upper echelon of musicianship,
Yeah, I mean, wow, and such a different experience. But I learned to love playing with Mel. Although he laid back on the beat, it was had its own kind of intensity. And
Yeah, yeah. I always found that about his playing. It was like, just a little behind on the beat, but it swung like,
like mad, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I know as a bass player, sometimes it's hard to navigate. It takes a while to like, if there is somebody who seems to be a little bit behind the beat, finding where you fit in, at least for myself, whether do you try to push it a little bit? If you go too far behind the beat, it starts to sound like it's kind of dragging. It's a real,
A fine line, yeah.
yeah,
Keep that tension in the space of the beat.
right. So, so you go from a really distinct musical voice like, Bill Evans, and then you mentioned Stan Getz, who's obviously, an icon, but also, an individual who had a reputation perhaps as being difficult at times. What was your experience with Getz?
Uh, Stan was a perfect player. I don't know how else to say it. I heard him crack maybe two or three notes in the 2 years I was with him, and we were working solid. He was a perfect player. I mean, and he I never heard him play a wrong note ever.
Mm,
His melodies were always pure and right on. I don't think he ever played an unintended note.
yeah.
And that I was trying to make the Stan get unfortunately that at the beginning of my tenure with him, I think I was trying to make the quartet be the Bill Evans trio,
Right.
and when he wasn't playing, it was a trio. It was a piano trio.
Good point.
So at some point, Jim McNeely from the big band, from Mel's band, I,
Sure.
Stan asked me to recommend someone. I didn't know many pianists, but I really liked Jim, and Jim was a fine composer.
Hmm.
And so Jim came on the band, and we started playing some of Jim's music
Sure.
in the group. So I was having a great time. Victor Lewis on drums.
Hmm.
And when Victor wasn't there, sometimes it'd be Billy Hart or Adam Nussbaum.
Right. All great players. Sure.
Yeah, and we were having we were having a great time, and the music was at a high level. And then John Abercrombie called me towards the end of my stint with Stan. He was
Right.
putting together a group with Peter Erskine, who I didn't really know yet.
Mm.
Knew of him,
Okay.
of course, through Weather Report.
Yeah.
And so my life was changing at that point. I was, you know, just married and about to have a child, or I had a child already,
Hmm.
and a young baby, and it was a tough choice to make. But I left Stan and then started working with John Abercrombie, and from that, I my association with Pete. When I had an opportunity to put a band together, I, I knew I wanted to do something other than a piano-based group,
Right.
just to kind of break the mold, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Makes sense.
And I'd been going to jam sessions and listening to. There's a loft scene in New York in those days, and I heard a couple different groups with multiple guitars in the band. I said, "Wow, if I've ever had a chance to do my own thing, I think I'd want to have two guitars, bass, and drums." And so that's how that Bass Desires group kind of came to be.
Yeah, which is like one of my favorite recordings. I mean, those Bass Desire recordings are phenomenal. And then you really like kind of had this association with great guitarists now as well. So for Bass Desires, Schofield, Frizzell, yourself, and Erskine, how did you settle? Not settle. How'd you come to choose Erskine? You mentioned, but Bill Frizzell and John Schofield.
Well, I'd heard Sco for a while already. Joe LaBarbera hit me to him when we were on the road with Bill, and I was aware of John's playing. I I, uh, I was familiar with Frizzell already because I'd been rehearsing with Paul Motion before I was went out on the road with Stan Getz. Paul was rehearsing regularly at his place and looking to put a band together. So I was the bass player that he chose, and Bill Frisell was the guitarist,
Hmm.
and the horn players were coming in and out. Um, but he settled finally on Joe Lovano, and I think Billy Drews was in there for that ensemble for a minute. Ellery Eskelin was one of the sax players that came in and out. But so that went on for while I was in New York working with Mel's band. Paul was rehearsing that group, trying to get something together. But then Stan called, and I needed to work, and he had a lot of work coming up. So I apologized to Paul Motion. I said, "Man, I gotta take this gig," and he understood. He understood. So that's how I knew I was aware of Frizzell through that. And so when the opportunity came, I thought, well, Frizzell's a different kind of guitarist. He'd be the perfect foil for somebody like Schofield.
Right.
And as it happened, they were about the same age. They referenced a lot of the same music. They were both in the jazz world. They also knew other things, other musics.
Yeah.
So it was a good fit. And Peter, I just learned, I just had was introduced to, and we were doing some playing with Abercrombie. So he was you know, I actually had called Joey Barron to make a gig, but Joey was busy and couldn't do it. So Peter was available, and we played a gig at the Silver Lining was the name of the club.
Okay.
It was on it was on 46th Street, West 46th Street, between Ninth and 10th Avenue. And I had the foresight to get somebody in there with a quarter-inch reel-to-reel tape recorder,
Sure. Oh yeah.
recorded it, edited it down, and sent it over to ECM as a possibility as an audition tape
Right.
and
Right.
they went, yeah, let's do it. So that came together, and we recorded at the power station there in New York with Koningshaug on
Hmm.
the engineer.
Yeah. Legendary engineer.
Manfred came over, flew over. We did it
Wow.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the ECM always has the great sounding records, of course. Um, and then like, but what a great what great foresight to put Frizzell and Schofield together in that way, because you would I would think that it could have created a weird contrast that might not have particularly worked creatively, but it totally worked. It was great.
Yeah, well, they're great musicians, so they're going to play. And it was a good foil because, I mean, Frizzell has his own kind of chops, but
Yeah.
he's not that long, fluid, horn-like uh,
Right.
facility and that conception, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
his sense of harmony is pretty deep, and his sound was kind of unique,
Hmm.
especially then. And we were allowing, he was open to exploring the guitar synthesizer and different things at that time.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got such a musical presence on any project that he does, of course.
True.
Yeah. And then, of course,
And so I had these heavy guys in the band.
and like,
I had to live up to that. Put myself in the hot seat there.
yeah, but you know what I like about what I think is interesting is that as great as you are technically on that particular album, you really I don't want to say you took a step back, but you really it was a group concept for sure. It wasn't like you weren't even with like I first expected bass desires as a bass player. I'm like, oh great, a bass heavy record. It wasn't that. It was you definitely have your moments, but
Well,
uh,
that was the conception. It's funny when guys put bands together, they actually become like a record producer in a certain way.
sure,
They're producing this record. I had to, and if you come from the point of view as well, I want the music to sound as good as it can. What are my elements? I have these great soloists, these great musicians. Let them play, have them
Right.
play. And anyway, they're gonna play the melody. They
Sure.
play the melodies. So
Mhm.
the rhythm section, that's the way it is. It's in a way, Charlie Hayden was real an influence because he would make bass records. I mean, he made records for himself to put him, as the Charlie Hayden ensemble or whatever.
Yeah.
But he didn't necessarily over feature himself or anything. It was more about the ensemble.
Right.
And that was such a, kind of a revelation for me and an inspiration that, oh, okay, I can do that. Why
Yeah.
not?
Like Dave Holland, I think, has a similar concept with his groups, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's great about it is that you know, definitely as a bass player, we can appreciate it, but when there are these very bass heavy records, it really limits your audience to very often bass aficionados, you know.
It can, unless you're talking about somebody who's such a virtuoso that, you can be, it's so compelling, it doesn't matter what instrument they're playing. But
Yeah.
there are few of those guys around, really few, I think.
You're one of those guys, man. To me, anyway. So, the other one that I consider this a classic album, and many do, of my generation, is "The Sound of Summer Running." Frizzell, Matheny, now Joey Barron.
But by then, that was the end of the 90s, and the Bass Desires band kind of came and went in the 80s. We had a couple live gigs in the early 90s, but that was about it. And the guys they had their own careers going pretty hot and heavy by then. And I think that I just wanted to do another two guitar project, and Pat was willing, and Bill was willing, and here's Joey Barron again, and uh, available this time.
Yeah, yeah,
So I wrote I wrote a fair amount of the music on that record and presented it in rehearsal, and we rehearsed it in Pat Metheny's music space in Manhattan. He loaned us his space to rehearse in, and it was nice.
yeah. But so conceptually, that record, I mean, it seems to have a almost a rootsy, folky kind of vibe connected with jazz. Was that something you were actively trying to do?
Definitely. I mean, when Pat said he was agreeable to doing the project, uh, you consider who you have in the band and write music tailored to that sound. And that I grew up in the Midwest. I was familiar with, and I'd been listening to Pat and Lyle for forever.
Sure.
And they had such strong musical identities. And it wasn't hard to write. It kind of flowed from hearing the sound in my head, what it was going to be like.
Hmm.
I was really happy with the tune Sound of Summer Running, the way Pat was so willing to go into it. He One whole take is just him
Yeah.
strumming that part, and he plays the shit out of that. He's on fire, that guy. He's unbelievable.
I mean, just music all the time, right?
All the time. He's such a fine musician, and well, all the guys in the group are, but he's really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it seems to very much function as a concept, like almost a concept album.
Yeah, it
My
was. Yeah, it was. And um I was happy with the way the tunes came out. The guys were willing to go in and kind of flesh out the gist of it, and they got right to the point, and I think that they identified with the, what can I say? The tunes aren't, a couple of the tunes I'm very proud of. The other ones they had to, make something out of it.
But sometimes isn't that the best when it's almost like a sketch type of thing, and You really get they really get to put
Yeah.
their shape to shape it like you said.
And then in having them write tunes too and contribute to them, then it's also their it's interesting for them, but also helps to so the music's not all about one kind of it fits, but it's not necessarily redundant. What can I say? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but there couldn't be another ensemble that made that same music. I mean, it's so
That's
inter
true. Yeah, that's true. Thanks.
beautiful, man. And I'm just to go, I don't want to keep you too long, but the one another record, and I don't know if this, I think this might be your most recent solo record. It was Overpass your most recent that was under your name's okay,
Yes.
right? Because I know obviously the great records with your wife, and all they're all phenomenal, but the to do a bass solo record. We had already talked about group concepts and bass albums, and what was your decision making on doing that, and how did you approach
Well,
such
ever
a concept
since,
like
yeah, I kind of was in the back of my mind at some point in my career to do it, and it was getting late.
that?
So I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try this. And we were in Brazil. Eliane uh, functioned as producer on that, and there's an instrument that I really like playing when I'm in Brazil, and it belongs to Paulo Gomez, who's a luthier down there. It's his bass, actually. He built it.
Okay,
He made that bass, and
so that's not your that's not your regular bass that you're playing.
no,
It does sound different, and I was going to ask you about that. Okay, yeah,
it's not my bass, but so he loaned it to me. I played on it for a week or so, rehearsing, in my room, just trying to come up with some ideas. I knew I wanted to play freedom jazz dance. I kind of worked up that head.
yeah,
There were a couple. I probably knew I was going to play Nardis. And I knew I wanted to get some of this kind of repetitive, meditative kind of stuff down, but I didn't know where it was going to go or how it was going to take shape. So in many regards, the album was very improvised. And I
well,
went into the studio not expecting it to be anything really. I said, well, I'm going to do this. If it comes out good enough, I'll submit it to Manfred and see if he wants to publish it. And so one thing, so it came out okay, and I to my liking, and we edited a little bit and then sent it to Manfred and
yeah. I think it came out great. I mean, there's not a lot of people who've done it. The one that comes to mind would be Dave Holland, I guess. Prior,
Dave. He was my inspiration originally for wanting to do it. When I heard in fact, I can tell you this, I was listening to Emerald Tears
Mhm.
when I was with Bill Evans in the late 70s. And I had this really nice stereo system at the time with a beautiful turntable and speakers and everything. I said, Bill, come over. Bill came to the apartment and we sat down and I said, I wanted you to hear this. So I put on Solar
Yeah.
from that.
Uh,
The recorded sound was phenomenal on that album. I don't know if you remember it. Uh,
yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah,
it just erupts off the turntable. That bass is incredible. But if it wasn't just the sound, I mean, his playing was incredible. And I wanted to show Bill this guy, listen to this.
yeah.
So, yeah,
You dug it?
he dug it. Yeah, he dug it.
What,
That was my inspiration for wanting to play just seeing that somebody could do it, had the conception and the chutzpah and the
good word for it. Yeah,
artistry to do it, and a record label that also was willing to, put it out there. It was pretty amazing. I said, wow, fantastic. Someday
yeah.
I want to do that.
Any designs on ever doing another one?
No.
Once was enough.
Well, that was enough. Yeah. But it was fun to do, I was just sort of winging it. And a couple of those things are real improvisations, like the Life of Pi, that's completely improvised.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it all is improvised. This is a long improvisation. But the way Freedom Jazz Dance came together, I really liked. and
Yeah, yeah, that's the one where you kind of keep that drone. I get, is it on maybe
the
on the
drone going, and I revisit the melody here and there throughout
right?
the piece. And then an artist was instead of stating the melody like so many jazz songs do, I just kind of got into it
Yeah.
and sort of like I don't know, imply it more than state it.
Hmm. And then there was the one, I'm sorry, I can't remember the title. I was listening to it this morning again, but where you do play arco, you play with the bow. Um,
Yeah, that one, Yin and Yang.
and yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's overdubbed, I guess, right? On
that's overdubbed. Yeah, I got into that bass's overtones. I don't know if it picked up as well on the recording, but it was pretty. You just strum the strings, and it had this really incredible
Mhm.
vibe.
Yeah, it does come through. That bass sounds phenomenal. I mean, it's the player as well, but yes, the instrument. Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course, there's a challenge in recording bass, as I'm sure you're well aware. But when you play, when you have a great instrument and there's no other instruments around, it really presents itself beautifully. The bass is almost like the second member of the group. I almost feel like of that in that recording. It's almost got its own
True.
personality.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
So in terms of your bass, what is your primary bass that you use?
These days I'm playing a little I wouldn't say little, I guess it's a 5/3/8, three-quarter size instrument.
Hmm.
My Italian bass, I've stopped carrying around. It's just too heavy and too old.
Yeah.
I don't take it anywhere anymore. But
Hmm.
that was my career bass, all with Bill Evans and throughout the 90s and into the 2000s. Lately, I've been playing this bass. We found it in near Stuttgart. There was a shop there called World of Basses, and,
Okay.
uh, and down there in southern, as in Germany. Uh, and I was looking for a smaller instrument and found this one. It's kind of, I don't know who made it. It's a nondescript, it's a little over 100 years old, maybe. Maybe it's 100 years old.
Yeah.
And somebody said it's Polish, but I think it's German, but it was repaired in Poland somewhere. Anyway,
Yeah.
it feels good, and it has a nice, for a smaller bass, has a big, robust low end. The top end isn't sing quite as much as the Italian bass, but it's more than adequate, and I've been enjoying playing it. It's easy to play. At my advanced age now, I'm 72 this year. And next month I'll be 72. It's just easier on the hands and
Sure. Yeah. And so
lighter
the
to carry around.
the Italian bass was that a full-size orchestral bass?
It was cut down when I bought it. It had been cut down from its original size, but it's not that it was huge in the hand. It was easy enough to play, but the sound was a little sluggish.
Hmm. I understand.
It was
Yeah.
real warm and buttery in the upper register. It was beautiful to play lyrically, it was gorgeous and bowed really nice. Recording was a challenge. Manfred even said it was kind of challenging to record that bass.
Um,
The
Take
spread was so
right.
big, but they figured out a way to focus it on the to come back to John Taylor, which is kind of why we started talking.
Yes, this is a promotion of his record, actually. No, no.
That studio album came out really nice, and there's a track on there which explores the kind of playing we were doing. It's the epitome of that trio from how deep is the ocean.
Mhm.
It's a great track.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorites from that record. Yeah.
Yeah, and but the live record is fascinating. Up Too Late is amazing. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
uh,
It is,
I want to
it is,
send that over to Steve Swallow. That's his tune. That's
mm,
Swallow's tune, and I bet he'll get a kick out of it.
yeah, that came out great. And then the last thing I want to ask you about, I love you for this and I hate you for this book. Uh, this book.
Well,
What-
I didn't have as much to do that as you probably hate Chuck more.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That was he asked me to perform those exercises on that. So I went through that was back in the early 90s and
Yeah,
I went over it for a couple weeks and then he flew me out to California and we went in the studio and I you know did what I did on the recording part of that book.
right.
The idea was kind of it's his conception for addressing motivic development and different things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. I'm talking about for those who are listening, concept for bass soloing. Um, but as a bass teacher, my students sometimes they're interested in like how do you approach soloing? And I've seen this book, and I said you're not ready for this one yet." Because it's there's some tough stuff in here, man. It's not an easy, you know, but
Yeah, but
concepts are brilliant,
yeah, I think I know I should probably review it myself just to he was kicking my tail when I did it. I remember that.
But I love it because I do keep going back to it, and every couple months I'm like I gotta let me get to the next little section here and try to perfect it. But it's great in the upper register stuff. It's really valuable. So, what's your next project?
Well, I work a lot now with primarily and mainly only with Ileani, my wife, we're musical partners and partners in life. And we're kind of, I'm not at liberty to discuss right now what we are working on something. And, you know, uh, she, it's a fun life to be able to play with your partner in life and
Sure.
makes, uh, and it's, you know, she's such a brilliant pianist and brilliant musician.
Sure,
Uh,
yeah.
keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, right. I mean, but that's a very musical household, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I'd be very happy to discuss it with her when it comes out. And do you have any gigs coming up in the New York area? Anywhere someone can come see you?
In fact, we'll be at Birdland in New York in November.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll try to
Are
check
you in
that.
New York? Are you in the New York area?
Yes, I'm in New Jersey.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
yeah, so I live in by the Jersey Shore. I don't know if you're how familiar you are with New Jersey, but
That's South Jersey.
yeah,
South.
so South Central. So a lot of my not far from Asbury Park, Red Bank. That's where a lot of my work is lately, playing because there is a pretty good little jazz scene here in New Jersey, and
Fantastic.
yeah, of course you're an hour from New York, hour from Philly, so it's been pretty fun.
Well, the day after we play we're going to be in Patterson at
Oh, okay.
there's a Shea Theater there.
Yes.
So the day after Birdland, we'll be there. It's a Sunday afternoon
Oh, excellent.
matinee gig.
Is this a duo gig or?
Oh, we'll be doing it with her quartet.
Oh, excellent. Cool. The work swept away stuff from
Well,
there.
no, it's not the jazz stuff so much. It's more Brazilian.
The album.
Yeah, we'll be doing the bossa novas and sambas and stuff like that. But she did a lot of improvisation, and it's a really wonderful show. It's
Oh, excellent. Oh, I'll make sure to promote it here on the show here.
great,
Yeah, and also I write for a magazine called Jersey Jazz Magazine. So very often when there's a jazz performance, we do a write up on it. So
terrific.
we'll try to get it promoted. Mark, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. I've always enjoyed your music. I love your playing, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Jay. It's a pleasure for me too. Thank you.
I have a good day, man. Appreciate you.
Bye.